What happens when one of Britain's most beloved actresses walks onto a daytime talk show expecting a friendly chat about her legendary career, only to be blindsided by a host who seems determined to tear her down in front of millions of viewers? In just 38 seconds, a single comment would turn a routine interview into the most explosive moment in daytime television history. The Loose Women's studio was buzzing with its usual energy that afternoon. Julie Walters had been invited on to discuss her latest projects and reflect on her incredible journey through British cinema. The panel consisted of Denise Welch, who was leading the discussion, along with Nadia Sawalha, Kay Adams, and Jane Moore. The audience had settled in, expecting the warm, lighthearted conversation that usually accompanied a guest of Julie's caliber. Julie walked out to enthusiastic applause, waving to the audience with that trademark smile that had endeared her to generations of fans. She took her seat at the end of the panel, looking relaxed in a simple but elegant outfit. The first few minutes went smoothly enough. Nadia asked about Julie's early days in theater, and Julie shared a charming anecdote about her first professional role. "It was absolutely terrifying," Julie said, laughing. "I remember standing in the wings thinking, what am I doing here? But once you get that first laugh from an audience, you're hooked." The panel laughed along with her. Kay nodded enthusiastically. "That's what we love about your performances. There's always that authenticity, that realness." "Well, thank you," Julie replied warmly. "I've always believed that whether you're doing comedy or drama, you have to find the truth in the character." Denise, who had been relatively quiet up to this point, leaned forward slightly. There was something in her expression that shifted the energy at the table. "Speaking of truth," she said, her tone changing, "there's been quite a bit of talk lately about your generation of actors and how you've all had it rather easy compared to what younger performers face today." Julie's smile faltered just slightly. "I'm not sure I'd say it was easy." "Oh, come on," Denise continued, waving her hand dismissively. "You lot came up in an era where there were actual opportunities, proper funding for the arts, theater companies that nurtured talent. Today's young actors are struggling just to get an audition." Nadia jumped in quickly, sensing the shift. "Well, I think every generation has its own challenges." But Denise wasn't backing down. "Do they, though? I mean, Julie, you've had this long, successful career, multiple awards, everyone knows your name. But what have you really done to help the next generation? What have you actually given back?" The audience had gone quiet. Julie sat up a bit straighter, her expression still polite, but clearly surprised by the line of questioning. "I've done quite a bit of mentoring, actually. I've worked with drama, schools. I've supported young actors." "Have you, though?" Denise pressed. "Or is that just what you say in interviews to sound good?" Jane Moore shifted uncomfortably in her seat. "Denise, I think that's a bit unfair." Denise turned to Jane with an almost theatrical look of innocence. "I'm just asking questions. Isn't that what we do here? Isn't that our job?" Julie's voice remained calm, but there was a firmness to it now. "I don't think your job is to make assumptions about people you don't actually know." "Oh, so now I'm the bad guy for asking legitimate questions?" Denise shot back. "This is exactly the problem with your generation. You can't handle any criticism. You've been praised and celebrated for so long that you think you're above being questioned." Kay tried to intervene. "I don't think anyone's saying that." "No, let her speak," Julie said quietly, looking directly at Denise. "I'd like to hear exactly what she thinks." Denise seemed to take this as encouragement. "All right then. I think actors of your generation have benefited from a system that no longer exists. And instead of acknowledging how lucky you were, you act like everything you achieved was purely down to talent and hard work. Meanwhile, there are incredibly talented young people out there who will never get the chances you got, and people like you just shrug and say, 'Oh, well, that's show business.'" "That's not fair," Nadia said firmly. "Julie has always been supportive of young talent." "Has she?" Denise turned back to Julie. Name 3 young actors you've personally helped get work in the last year. Julie's expression had shifted from surprised to something colder, more guarded. I don't think I need to provide you with a list to prove my worth. See? You can't even answer the question, Denise said triumphantly. Because it's a ridiculous question, Julie replied, her voice still controlled, but with an edge to it now. What you're doing right now is not journalism. It's not even a proper interview. You're trying to create conflict where there isn't any. I'm trying to have an honest conversation, Denise countered. No, you're trying to make me look bad on television, Julie said simply. And I'm wondering why. The other panelists exchanged glances. The audience was completely silent, transfixed by what was unfolding. Denise laughed, but it sounded forced. Oh, please, don't play the victim. You're a wealthy, successful actress who's had every advantage. And you're a talk show host who's attacking a guest for no apparent reason, Julie responded. Do you do this to everyone, or am I special? Jane tried again to redirect. Maybe we should talk about Julie's new project. But Denise ignored her. I'm not attacking you. I'm asking you to reflect on your privilege. Julie's eyes narrowed slightly. My privilege. Right. You want to talk about privilege? I grew up in a working-class family in Birmingham. My father was a builder. My mother worked in the post office. I won a scholarship to drama school and worked every single day to build my career. What exactly do you know about my privilege? You're missing the point, Denise said, her voice rising slightly. No, I think you're missing the point, Julie shot back. You invited me here under the pretense of a friendly chat, and instead you're using me as a punching bag for some agenda I don't even understand. The agenda is honesty, Denise said sharply. Something that's clearly in short supply when people talk about the entertainment industry. Honesty? Julie repeated. Is that what you call this? Making baseless accusations and then acting offended when someone challenges you? Denise leaned back in her chair, arms crossed. I'm not making accusations. I'm asking you to reflect on the advantages you've had that others haven't. Everyone has different advantages and disadvantages, Julie replied evenly. That's life. But what you're doing isn't asking me to. Reflect. You're trying to make me feel guilty for working hard and succeeding. Kay interjected again, her voice strained. Can we please move on to something else? This isn't productive. No, it's fine, Julie said, holding up a hand. Let's finish this conversation since Denise seems so determined to have it. Denise's eyes lit up, apparently mistaking Julie's willingness to engage as weakness. Good. So you admit that you've had advantages. Of course I've had advantages, Julie said. I've also faced obstacles. I've been rejected more times than I can count. I've struggled financially. I've dealt with sexism and ageism in this industry. But you don't want to hear about any of that, do you? You just want to paint me as some out-of-touch elite who doesn't understand real people. Well, do you? Denise challenged. Do you understand what it's like for ordinary people struggling to make ends meet while watching celebrities live in luxury? Jane's voice was incredulous. What? Does that have to do with anything? Julie's here to talk about her work, not to justify her existence to you. She doesn't have to justify her existence, Denise said. Just her attitude. My attitude? Julie's voice remained calm, but her posture had stiffened. What exactly is wrong with my attitude? The attitude that you're somehow special, that you're above criticism, Denise replied. I never said I was above criticism, Julie responded. But there's a difference between criticism and what you're doing. You're not critiquing my work or my choices. You're attacking my character based on assumptions you've made. Nadia tried once more to redirect. Maybe we should talk about Julie's charity work. She's done a lot for various causes over the years. Oh, here we go, Denise said dismissively. The charity defense. Rich people love to talk about their charity work. Julie's expression had gone very still. You really have no idea who you're talking to, do you? I know. Exactly who I'm talking to, Denise said. A wealthy actress who wants everyone to think she's wonderful. No one's asking you to apologize, Denise said, though her tone suggested otherwise. Really? Because that's exactly what it feels like, Julie replied. Every question you've asked has had an underlying message. That I don't deserve what I've achieved. That I haven't earned my place. That I'm somehow less than because I've been successful. And I'm done with it. Completely done. Nadia leaned forward, speaking directly to Julie. Julie, I just want to say that I think your work has been inspirational to so many people, myself included. Thank you, Nadia, Julie said, her voice softening slightly as she turned to her. But Denise wasn't done. Inspirational. There we go. More empty praise. This is exactly what I'm talking about. We just fawn over these established names instead of having real conversations about the state of the industry. Kay's voice was sharp now. Denise, you're being rude. I'm being honest, Denise retorted. There's a difference between being honest and being hostile, Kay replied. Julie stood up suddenly, and the movement silenced everyone. She carefully removed her microphone, her hands steady. I think we're done here. Oh, so you're just going to walk off? Denise said, her voice dripping with condescension. How very professional. Julie turned to look at her, and there was something in her expression that was absolutely withering. Professional? You want to talk about professional? A professional interviewer does their research. They treat their guests with respect. They ask thoughtful questions that actually lead somewhere. What you've done here today is neither professional nor particularly clever. It's just mean. I'm not being mean, Denise protested. I'm challenging you. No, Julie said firmly. You're bullying me. There's a difference. And I'm not going to sit here and be your target. The other. 3 panelists were watching this unfold with visible discomfort. Nadia spoke up again, her voice gentle but firm. Julie, I'm so sorry this has happened. It's not your fault, Julie said to her kindly. Then she turned back to Denise. You know what's really sad about this? I actually admired you. I thought you were intelligent, funny, someone who brought something interesting to these kinds of shows. But what you've shown me today is that you're willing to sacrifice basic decency for what? A viral moment? Some headlines? Denise's face had flushed. That's not what this is about. Then what is it about? Julie asked. Please enlighten me. What was the point of all this? Denise seemed to struggle for a moment. I just think that people in your position should be held accountable. Accountable for what exactly? Julie's voice was quiet but cutting. For working hard? For being successful? For not conforming to whatever narrative you've decided I should fit into? For being out of touch, Denise said. Julie laughed, but it was a bitter sound. Out of touch. Right. Because you know me so well. Because you've spent so much time with me, understanding my life, my experiences, my values. Oh wait, you haven't. You've just made assumptions based on nothing. Jane Moore had clearly had enough. Denise, I think you owe Julie an apology. I'm not apologizing for asking tough questions, Denise said stubbornly. They weren't tough questions, Julie interjected. They were accusations dressed up as questions. There's a difference. Kay nodded. Julie's right. This wasn't fair. Denise looked around at her fellow panelists, seemingly surprised to find them aligned against her. So you're all just going to side with her? We're siding with common decency, Nadia said quietly. Julie gathered her things, moving with a dignity that made Denise's behavior look even worse by comparison. I came here today excited to talk about my work, to connect with your audience, to share some stories. Instead, I've been subjected to what can only be described as a public ambush. I don't know what I did to deserve this treatment, and frankly, I don't care anymore. You're being oversensitive, Denise muttered. Julie stopped and turned back one final time. No, I'm being rational. What you've done here today says far more about you than it does about me, and I think everyone watching can see that. The audience, which had been silent throughout this exchange, suddenly broke into applause. It started with just a few people, but quickly spread until most of the audience was clapping in support of Julie. Denise's face went from flushed to pale as she realized she'd lost the room entirely. "This is ridiculous," Denise said, looking at the audience. "You're applauding her for walking off?" "They're applauding her for standing up for herself," Jane said pointedly. Julie was at the edge of the set now, ready to leave. A producer had rushed over, clearly trying to manage the situation, but Julie politely waved them off. She turned back to the cameras, speaking directly to the viewers at home. "To anyone watching, I want you to know that you should never let anyone treat you the way I was treated here today. It doesn't matter who they are, or what platform they have. You deserve respect. You deserve kindness. And you absolutely deserve better than this." With that, she walked off the set to continued applause from the audience. The camera cut back to the panel, where 3 of the 4 women looked mortified, and Denise sat with her arms crossed, her expression defiant, but her eyes betraying uncertainty. Nadia was the first to speak, her voice shaky. "Well, that was uncomfortable." "That was appalling," Kay corrected. "Denise, what were you thinking?" Denise's jaw tightened. "I was thinking that we should be able to have honest conversations without everyone getting their feelings hurt. There's a difference between honest and cruel," Jane said. "What you did was cruel." "Oh, for God's sake," Denise snapped. "She's a millionaire actress. I think she can handle a few tough questions." "Those weren't tough questions," Nadia said, her voice firmer now. "You were attacking her from the moment you started talking about her generation. It was personal, and it was unnecessary." The audience was murmuring now, and not in a supportive way. Someone called out, "You were well out of order," and others voiced agreement. Denise tried to address the audience. "Look, I understand that people are upset, but this is what happens when we try to have real conversations instead of just softball interviews." "Real conversations involve respect," Kay said. "What you did wasn't real conversation. It was an ambush." Jane turned to the camera. "I think I speak for the 3 of us when I say that we're deeply sorry for what just happened. Julie Walters is a legend of British cinema, and she deserved so much better than this," Denise scoffed. "Oh, so now we're all just going to pretend that I'm the villain here?" "You are the villain here," Nadia said bluntly. "You attacked a guest who came here in good faith. You made assumptions about her life and her character without any basis. And when she tried to defend herself, you doubled down." "I was asking legitimate questions about privilege and opportunity," Denise insisted. "No, you were being spiteful," Kay said, "and everyone could see it." The tension at the table was palpable. Denise looked around at her co-hosts, clearly not expecting this level of pushback from them. "I can't believe you're all turning on me." "We're not turning on you," Jane said. "We're calling out behavior that was unacceptable. There's a difference." "Unacceptable?" Denise's voice rose. "You know what's unacceptable? The fact that we can't have honest discussions about the entertainment industry without everyone clutching their pearls." "This wasn't a discussion," Nadia said. "This was you attacking someone. And you know what? I'm glad she walked out. She shouldn't have had to sit there and take that." The audience applauded again, and Denise's expression darkened further. "Fine. You all want to make me the bad guy? Go ahead. But don't come crying to me when this show becomes nothing but puff pieces and celebrity worship." "There's a middle ground between puff pieces and what you just did," Kay said, "and you know it." A producer was now visible at the edge of the set, making gestures to wrap things up. Jane saw him and nodded slightly. "I think we need to take a break." "Yes, let's take a break," Denise said sarcastically. "Let's all calm down and pretend this didn't happen." "No one's pretending it didn't happen," Nadia said. "We're all going to have to deal with the fallout from this." As they cut to commercial, the camera lingered just long enough to catch Denise standing abruptly and walking off the set herself, leaving. The other 3 panelists sitting in stunned silence. Backstage, Julie was surrounded by concerned production staff. A young assistant was offering her water, and a producer was apologizing profusely. "Ms. Walters, I am so sorry. That should never have happened. We had no idea Denise was going to go in that direction." Julie waved away the apology with a tired gesture. "It's not your fault. You can't control everything that happens live. Still, you were our guest, and you were treated terribly," the producer continued. "We completely understand if you want to make a complaint." "I don't want to make a complaint," Julie said wearily. "I just want to go home." The assistant spoke up hesitantly. "For what it's worth, I think you handled that brilliantly. The way you stood up for yourself, the things you said, it was really powerful." Julie managed a small smile. "Thank you, love. That's kind of you to say." Another staff member appeared, looking flustered. "The switchboard is going crazy. Social media is exploding. Everyone's talking about what just happened." The producer grimaced. "I can imagine. This is going to be a nightmare to deal with." "I'm sure it will be," Julie said, gathering her coat. "But that's your problem now, not mine. I'm going home to my family, and I'm going to try to forget this whole awful afternoon." As she headed toward the exit, she passed by a monitor showing the live feed from the studio. The show had come back from commercial, and the 3 remaining panelists were attempting to salvage what was left of the episode. Denise was notably absent from the table. Nadia was speaking directly to camera. "Before we continue, I just want to say something. What happened here today was not okay. Julie Walters is someone I've admired my entire life, and she deserved so much better than what she received. On behalf of those of us who believe in treating guests with respect and dignity, I want to apologize to her and to all of you watching at home." Kay nodded in agreement. "Absolutely. This show is supposed to be about having fun, honest conversations, not about tearing people down. And what happened here was someone being torn down for no good reason." Jane added, "We're going to be having some serious conversations behind the scenes about how to make sure this never happens again." Julie turned away from the monitor and headed out into the cold afternoon air. A small crowd had gathered outside the studio, apparently having heard about the drama unfolding inside. When they spotted Julie, several people called out words of support. "You were brilliant in there." "She was well out of order." "We love you, Julie." Julie waved at them gratefully, but didn't stop to chat. She just wanted to get to her car and leave this whole experience behind. Back in the studio, the show was limping toward its conclusion. The remaining panelists had tried to move on to other topics, but the energy was completely off. The audience seemed distracted, still processing what they'd witnessed. Every few minutes, someone would glance at Denise's empty chair, a visual reminder of how badly things had gone wrong. During another commercial break, Kay leaned over to Nadia. "This is a disaster. Complete disaster," Nadia agreed. "I can't believe she went after Julie like that." Jane shook her head. "I've never seen anything like it. Julie Walters, of all people, one of the nicest, most respected actresses in the country, and Denise just decided to eviscerate her on live television." "Do you think she planned it?" Nadia asked. "I don't know," Kay said. "But even if she didn't, the way she kept pushing and pushing, it was like she wanted to provoke a reaction." "Well, she got one," Jane said grimly. "Just not the one she was expecting." When the show finally ended, the 3 women left the set quickly, each heading to their dressing rooms without the usual post-show chatter. The atmosphere backstage was tense. Everyone knew they'd just witnessed something that would have serious repercussions. In one of the production offices, executives were already in emergency meetings, trying to figure out how to handle the situation. The video of Julie's exit was already going viral online, with thousands of people commenting on Denise's behavior and praising Julie for standing up for herself. Meanwhile, Denise had shut herself in her dressing room, refusing to speak to anyone. Through the door, staff could hear her on the phone, her voice raised in anger as she presumably talked to her agent or publicist. By the time evening rolled around, the incident had become the top trending topic on social media. Clips of the confrontation were being shared everywhere, dissected and analyzed. The overwhelming consensus was that Denise had been completely out of line, and Julie had handled herself with remarkable grace and dignity under extremely difficult circumstances. Television critics were already writing their takes, many of them scathing in their assessment of Denise's conduct. What should have been a pleasant chat with a beloved actress turned into an uncomfortable display of hostility, wrote one. Denise Welch's aggressive questioning crossed the line from challenging to cruel. Another wrote, Julie Walters showed us all how to handle a bully. With calm, measured responses, and ultimately the courage to walk away when enough was enough, she demonstrated a class that was sorely lacking from her interviewer. The other Loose Women panelists who had been present issued statements of their own, each making it clear that they had been appalled by what transpired and fully supported Julie's decision to leave. For Julie, watching this all unfold from the comfort of her home, there was a strange mix of emotions. On one hand, she was still upset about how she'd been treated. On the other, the outpouring of support from the public was touching and somewhat vindicating. Her phone hadn't stopped ringing all evening. Fellow actors calling to offer support, friends checking in to make sure she was okay, journalists requesting interviews. She'd turned it off eventually, just wanting some peace and quiet. But as she sat there, reflecting on the day's events, she found herself thinking about that moment when she'd stood up and removed her microphone. In that instant, she'd made a choice to refuse to participate in her own humiliation. And looking back, she was proud of that choice. She'd spent decades in an industry that often demanded women, especially older women, accept poor treatment without complaint. She'd seen colleagues put up with rudeness, condescension, and outright hostility because they were told that's just how things were. But today, she'd said no. And in doing so, maybe she'd shown others that they could do the same. The next morning, the story was still dominating headlines. The incident had sparked broader conversations about how women, particularly older women, were treated in the media, about the difference between tough journalism and simple cruelty, about the importance of standing up for oneself, regardless of the setting or circumstances. Julie's phone was on again, and among the messages was one from Nadia, apologizing again for what had happened and expressing admiration for how Julie had handled it. There were similar messages from Kay and Jane. Notably, there was nothing from Denise. As the days went by, Julie returned to her regular life and work, but the incident continued to resonate. People would stop her on the street to tell her how inspiring they'd found her response. Young actors reached out to say that seeing her stand up for herself had given them courage to do the same in their own difficult situations. And through it all, Julie remained characteristically modest about the whole thing. When asked about it in subsequent interviews, she would simply say, I just refuse to be treated poorly. That's not heroic. That's basic self-respect. And everyone deserves that.